Welcome, everyone. Appreciate you joining for episode 2 of our Legal Engineering Lab webinar series. My name is Mark Surico. I'm a solutions architect here at BRYTER. I work in our US team based out of New York. And today I'm going to walk you through some BRYTER functionalities specifically around batch automation and high volume workflows. So for the folks that are familiar with BRYTER, you'll probably have worked in batch processing before. For those maybe not as familiar or just getting started, this will be a great session to be able to learn how to run multiple jobs and multiple workflows in continuation simultaneously. So here are some of the things we're going to cover today. We're going to work on a use case for litigation response automation, the background being when a new matter arises and we need to create a number of claim letters for the claimants. We want to do that in a unified and high scale fashion as opposed to one by one individually editing and creating these letters. Some of the functionalities we're going to cover are creating intake forms, including dynamic intake forms with what are known as collections in BRYTER. We'll be using a batch process to automate the creation of these letters in bulk as opposed to one individually. We'll do some conditional document automation, some database storage and retrieval, and we'll also hopefully get to some AI components as well and showing you a bit about how we can use AI to help triage all of these processes and make them a bit more dynamic and streamlined. I will say before we go ahead and get started, there will be questions taken. So if you do have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I may not see them right away, but I will try and get to them as soon as possible. Of course, you can always reach out following this if you do have questions or use cases that you would think this might be a good use case to try out. All right. So as always, we're going to start from sort of our blank screen here in BRYTER. And the first thing we're going to do, we're going to create a new intake form. So the idea being that we want to, when a new case arises, a new matter comes through, we want to be able to collect the relevant details and also collect the information for each of the claimants of that case. So we're going to start with just a pretty straightforward intake form here. We're going to call it matter details. We do want this to have multiple components to it, so we're going to add a number of different input forms here. Typically, I like to just go, and if I know the pieces of information I want, I'll just go and make them, and then I'll edit them afterwards. So we're going to get some standard information here. So defendant name, maybe we'll go for defendant address, what type of issue this is going to be. What else? The jurisdiction we can add as well. We'll also add in, let's see, settlement proposal in this case. And let's see, we'll do some conditional logic over the tone, and we can also play with this in the AI as well, but the tone of the letter, so informal versus formal, and we'll get into that a bit. And then why don't we do response deadline for this one? All right, so I have a pretty simple matter detail intake form here. What I'm going to do is just tidy this up. We want this to be a text. We want this to also be a text. And we're going to do the same for a number of these. For defendant address, we'll make it a text, but we'll also allow for line breaks to give it some more room to put a full address in. Issue type. In here, we can add a few different issue types. I'm going to keep it fairly straightforward. I'm going to say we'll have non-payment as an issue type, and we'll have service issue as an issue type, and we'll just keep those two for now. Jurisdiction, same. We'll keep it simple. We'll do US and EU for this case. Settlement proposal, I'll just keep this as a yes, no. And actually, I just realized I should add the labels to these ones. Just copy and pasting those. Letter tone, and again, this is where we can get into some conditional aspects of the actual letter itself, formal versus informal. We can do that in a couple of different ways. And then response deadline, we'll want this to be a date. And why don't we make the format updated? All right. So we have a very straightforward matter detail intake form. Just going to validate this quickly, hit the preview. Always good to check as you're going. And I can see here that I forgot to add a label to the letter tone, so I'll just add that. All right. So that's our initial, we're setting up the matter, we're getting the core details out of the way. Next, we're going to want to get the individual claimant details. Now, we're not going to want to do this on a one-by-one individual scale. Rather, what we're going to do is create another input, and we'll call this claimant details. And we're going to similarly create a multi-input, add a title to it, claimant details. And now we'll do the same. So let's go with, we want the name of the claimant. We're going to want the type of claim, claim type. We're going to want what's the amount that they're claiming. And then let's ask if they have provided any supporting evidence. All right, claimant name. We're going to keep that as, we're going to change that to a text. Claim type, we'll keep that as a single select. And we'll say this is either a standard or a priority claim. Claim amount, we're going to want that to be a number because that's going to be the amount that they're claiming. We can allow decimals, that makes sense. We can keep everything as is with that. And then supporting evidence, we can say, you know, like that. All right, now, again, we've created a pretty straightforward intake form here. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to scroll down to the bottom. We can say allow multiple responses. And this is going to convert it into a collection, which means that we're going to be able to collect multiple iterations of this intake form at once. So we have these 4 questions, but we can have them asked multiple times, as many times as we need in this particular case. And what I'll do is I will just run a quick test in the preview here. That all looks good. And then give you a sense for, on the next page, here's our claimant details. And we have our first entry. And if we need to add multiple more, we can always do that with add another entry here. So it allows us to capture not just one individually, but multiple claimant information all at once. Okay. Next, what we might do is create a, always like to give users the ability to review and before they hit submit on any of this. And actually what we also might add to that is a summary. And oftentimes like to give myself a bit of extra space to create a summary and make a more organized summary that way. So I'll create a text node here and I will summarize what we've captured so far so that we can provide it to the users there. So what I'll do, let me add a header column here, and I'm gonna just make it 2. And we will say this is for our matter details. And this will be case name. We had reference number, defendant, their address, issue type, and we'll add a couple more rows. And jurisdiction, settlement proposal, letter tone, and response deadline. Delete this row. And then, as you would always, we can add in these values. Defendant name, address, issue type. Tone and response deadline. All right, so a nice clean table to show there. And then we're also going to want to do the claimant details, and that will look a little bit different. I might not make this one a table, but if I reference the claimant details, which is, of course, a collection now, you'll see we'll get this collection block. So this is going to repeat whatever's inside this block will repeat for each one of the entries we have. So what I might do is I'll just clear this out, start from scratch, and we'll say we're going to do the name, and then we'll say the claim type, and maybe in parentheses, we'll put the amount as well. And just to give that a bit more structure, I'm going to make that a bolded list. So we have this summary, which would be a very static list for the matter details, and then a dynamic one for the claimant details, which we've created here. So what I'll do is add this summary to our review page. And then I typically like to make some sort of affirmation that the user has to go through to submit the details so they're not accidentally going to the next page and submitting things they didn't want to. So something like confirm and submit. And then maybe we'll give them an option to exit if they don't want to. All right, so we've created our very straightforward intake form. Typically, what we'll want to do next is to save this information. So let's go ahead and create a new action. We'll call it save matter. And if we go to a write database action here, we don't have any databases. We'll configure a new one. We'll call this matters. And a nice fun thing, helpful thing is this generate fields automatically. So based on everything that we have here, if I click this, it will show me all of the values that are available in this particular module currently, and we can automatically create a database using those. So what I'll do is select the ones that I'm interested in from that matters, matters details, response deadline. Why don't we also grab the user email and full name? And why don't we save that? I typically like to clean this up and just make it the name itself, just a point of personal preference. So you can always leave it as is. So and then for this one, maybe I'll call it submitter email, or even better yet, why don't we do lawyer email? And this one will do lawyer name. Create new database. And the nice thing here is everything is already mapped. I don't have to go and manually map it after the fact. So we've saved our matter after we hit the review and submit. And now what we need to do is create the process by which we're going to generate the letters for each of the claimants that we get based on these details. So that is going to be another new action. We'll call it batch create claimant letters. Another best practice I always like to stress is naming things what they do. It makes it much easier for yourself when you're going back and debugging, and also for people who come in after the fact and are trying to understand the applications that you've built. So when we create a batch process, we need to reference a collection, which is claimant details. So for each record that's created in the claimant details, we're going to run the process that many times, each one for each. but we don't have a module yet for this. So we need to go ahead and create it. So let me go ahead and publish this. And then what I'm going to do is create a new module, and I'll duplicate my page here and we'll go back to the start. And all right, similarly for naming of modules and data views, things like that, I always like to name it exactly what it is, especially if it's something that's happening in the background, like a batch process. I'll usually put this indicator to tell me that this is a batch process, so I know. And we'll call it generate claimant letters. All right, when we're creating a batch process or the module that will be the process behind a batch process, first thing I always like to do is get the start parameters out of the way. Start parameters are going to be the information that's passed from the matter intake module into the batch module to do the actual work itself. Now, there are some tricks here that are very nice. One is, for example, I always like to, if I'm storing data in a database, I always like to grab the ID. That way, instead of entering in, 20 different fields in a start parameter, I can enter one matter ID and then read the database and get the rest of the values. So it's just one less thing to have to worry about there. So we're going to map the matter ID. However, you'll have noticed we didn't save yet the claimant information. So we're going to add claimant name. All of the fields that we created are going to create in that collection intake. So claim type. We're going to do claim amount. Important for this one because it is a number to have the types match. So we want to make this a number. The same would be true for email address or dates. We want to make sure that the data type matches, otherwise it will fail. And then we had the supporting evidence question. All right, so we have our details that we're going to pass over into the batch process here. And the first step, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to get those matter details. So I'm going to do a database read and grab matters, and I have that matter ID that I set. So now I'll have that exact matter here. All right. We can get rid of this. So a batch process by nature is going to be one that has no user-facing elements, so there won't be any inputs. In fact, you can't actually link a module that has inputs as a batch process. So one thing to note there. What I'm going to do is I know that I'm going to create this claimant letter. So I'm just going to create this as a reference value. And then from here, I'm going to also call this claimant letter, except this is going to be the create document node. And you'll see here, when I click in, I can hit update. And when I do, I have this link. These are now linked values. So I have just the one value to reference, but depending on the logic or the workflow that I've set up, it will be the most relevant one. So actually I'm going to hit copy on this and I'm going to paste it here and create this branch because we're going to have two separate letter types that are possible here. But we're only going to have to manage the one claimant letter. What I'm going to do now is upload a template, and I will grab a standard demand letter template here. And you can see here we have a few different values that we're going to have here. And actually, just for my sake, I'm going to label this. So I haven't added the condition yet, but I'm just giving it a label so I know while I'm building that this is going to be my standard claim letter. And I can start filling in some of the details here, the address, the case name, the reference number, salutation I don't have yet, but I do have claimant name, issue type, amount, response deadline this days. That's a calculation we're going to have to do. Let's see, lawyer name, and then we have some of these conditionals in the letter. So what we'll do, and I'll show you what the letter looks like. pretty straightforward, but we do have some of these conditionals, so some language that will only show up in the case of jurisdictional differences or in the case of if evidence has been provided or not, those types of things. So we'll want to build out some of these values as well. We might also put in some conditions within the context of the workflow itself to determine the type of letter if we want to override what our user said. What we'll start with is we have this today value, which is just a date value. We're going to add a value, create a date. I'm going to call it today. And then you'll see here I have this option to create a custom date, or I can do the date of the user's interaction. So this will be whenever this batch process is run, it will capture that date. I can update the format here. One nice thing, another tip if you didn't already know, is when you name values or conditions for document automation, the exact same thing as the value that it's going to be mapped to in the module. You don't have to actually click in and hit the mapping and type out what you're looking for. It will automatically map that to the placeholder. So that's another way to keep yourself straight. It also helps for organizational purposes when you're running through. So why don't we create a couple more of these different values here. So we have response deadline days. This is going to be an action response deadline days, and this is going to be a calculation between dates. So we're going to grab the date the matter was created, and we're going to also grab the response deadline and get the date, the days between those two. And we can go ahead and map that. Salutation. So this is sort of where we can play the formal versus informal tone that we've set. So we'll call this salutation, and then we're going to add a value here, but we're going to have two conditional blocks. So this will be for our formal. This will be for our informal. And this is just going to be, as an example, the intro to our letter. So we'll say this is dear sir or madam, and this will just be hello. And then we can set those here. And the letter tone is formal. And for this one, the letter tone is informal. All right, so we've got that. Go back, click map that. All right, now we have a couple of others. So if the settlement, I'm just going to copy these to make it easy on myself. If there is a settlement, we're going to say that. One thing that's another tip that I always like to use is we have these empty actions that we can just copy and paste them as well. Helps to break up the workflow and also helps for creating different work routing streams. So I'm going to create a new value. And one thing that you'll often see in document automation is using numbers as the trigger for a particular conditional statement. And what that means is you can think of it sort of like a light switch. If the number is 0, then the light switch is off, so the condition is not met. If the number is 1, the light switch is on and the condition is met, and therefore whatever text is beneath or within that condition will be shown in the actual document itself. So we can create this logic that says if the settlement condition is equal to yes, so we'll say settlement proposal equals yes, then we're going to turn that light switch on to 1. Otherwise, we're going to skip it. We have another one here. Let me copy and I'll paste another placeholder. And we have jurisdiction equals EU and US. And we're going to do the same with that light switch thought here. But jurisdiction equals EU 1. And then I'm actually just going to copy and paste this, change this to US. And let's set the condition for jurisdiction equals EU. And jurisdiction equals US. Add another placeholder empty here, and then connect my values. If I come down to the claimant letter, I can map this, and then we have one more. And what I might do is just copy this entire block because I know it's going to have the same structure, and I'm going to paste that in. Do a little cleanup on the wording here. And then these new values are going to be called evidence available. And I'm just going to update this. Evidence available equals yes. Evidence available equals no. And then we'll change the condition to supporting evidence equals yes. And supporting evidence equals no. All right. So after all that, we've created and mapped all of our placeholders here. One other tip. So in this other claimant letter, I have one. This is for standard. I have one for priority. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to delete this. I'm going to copy this one and paste it. So this is an exact copy now with the exact same template. But me knowing the templates that I made and knowing that the values and the conditions are the same and they're named the same, I'm going to create this priority demand letter, and I'm going to upload it here. And what you'll see is everything is already mapped, even though this is a completely different, not completely different, but it is a different demand. It is a different letter. All of the things are already mapped because they have the same name. So when you're creating multiple templates with different versions, you can think also to keep the naming and placeholder conventions the same. That way you don't have to duplicate your work over and over again. The last thing I'm going to do for this is the claim type. And this is going to be for standard. And this, we could just leave it as else because we only have the two options, but let's just put in priority. I'll label that as well. Okay. Now, the final thing here is we're just going to finish off this. So we're going to have a result that we have to have. So we have our full option here, and we're going to publish that. That is now done for now. And then now that we finished that, what we can do is come back to our matter intake and hit refresh. And when we do that, we'll see that the generate claim letters batch process module is available. We're going to hit that, and now we can map all of those values that we set in the start parameter. So the matter ID is going to be the ID from the save matter action, and then all of the rest will be the collection items that we've gathered here. So we have claim type, claim amount, and then supporting evidence. And one thing I forgot to add here is we want not only these different claim letters, but also a claim notice under certain conditions. So what I'm going to do is add one more thing. So in this case, what we want is every claimant will have at least one letter created for them, but some, depending on the condition, might have another claim notice, for example. So what we're going to do here is create a new document called claim notice. Create that document, upload it here. We should have all of the values that we need already. We can see here, most of them are here. We'll just add in these again. Name, issue type, amount, and lawyer name. We'll set the condition of this for if there is not supporting evidence. So supporting evidence equals no. We want this to be captured. We want this to be created and made for this claimant as well. The final thing we're going to need here is we're going to want to store all this information. It's when it happens, it's just going to sort of happen in the background, but we do want a way to retrieve it, of course. So the final here is save claimant. Similarly, we don't have a claimants database. Now, here's where we get into a bit of relational databasing. So we have our matters database, but we want sort of one layer, a child database related to the matter. So let's configure a new one. Always like to call it exactly what it is again. So matters being the parent, claimants being the child in this case. Similarly, I'm just going to generate the fields automatically, keep it easy for myself. And we can do, let's add the case name. We're going to add the claimant name. We want to make sure we have the matter ID. That way we can tie them together. Supporting evidence. And let's see, we want the claim notice. And we also want the claimant letter. I think that's everything we need for this particular one. Similarly, I might just clean this up quickly. Type mount. All right. Created that, saved that. Excellent. All right. So now what we're going to get is a new record for each of the claimant letters that we have, and it will be within this new database that we've created. All right. So now we can come back here, and we've mapped everything here. One thing we'll want to do is, because we're going to have the user see on screen all of the letters that have been generated. So we have this toggle to wait for the module executions to finish, which just means let everything happen in the background, at which point go to the next part of the workflow, go to the next node in the workflow. We also have these custom processing messages, and I have a couple here. So you can add in things for your user to say, for example, give them an idea of what's happening at this point. That way they have a sense for, they're not just staring at a black box. There actually is work being done in the background. So we might add some of that there. All right. Now, another thing we might want is another document to be created, but for the matter level. So we're going to create documents for claimants individually, but we might also want to create documents at the matter level, at that high parent level. So we'll create a document. We will add upload here, and I have this matter summary. And we can add these details here. So these are some calculations we can do. Here are the claimant details. So this is going to be, I'll give you a preview of that. We open it up. We have this table that'll be in our document, our summary document, which will be a dynamic table of the claimants. So each of the claimants, and we can also do a calculation for the total amount of the claims for all claimants. So what we'll do is we'll map claimant details here, and then we can choose the name, the supporting evidence, claim type, and amount. All right, perfect. And now we have these two. So these are calculations, the number of claimants, as well as the total claim amount. One thing that's often useful to do, especially when we're going to want to retrieve these letters that have been created, is we can, after that, because we're going to wait for the batch to finish, we can just retrieve that information right back. So we're going to do a database read. We're going to grab the claimants here. Instead of finding one record, we're going to find multiple. And we're going to create a filter where the matter ID is equal to the ID from the matter that we've created. And maybe we'll say alphabetize that by the claimant name. So we have this database read, which will also return a collection of all of the claimants that we've created in this process that have just had letters created for them. And then in order to get the number of claimants, the total claim amount, we can do another action and we can say, let me just copy the name so I have it right. Number of claimants. And here we're going to perform a collection operation. So this is going to be a calculation over the collection itself. So you can do things like summing, averaging, you can sort or filter further, you can pick a specific one. In this case, we're just going to count the claimant details. And then I'm actually going to copy this and do another one. And this is going to be the total claim amount. So we'll change the name of that. And instead of count, we're going to sum. And we're going to sum the claim amount. And then we can map both of those automatically. All right. Now, finally, we're going to add a result. Call it results. Let's say letters have been generated. And we can also add that info block. We'll add that summary that we created earlier, so we don't have to redo that. But we might also add in that, not that matter, but the claimant details. So again, I'll create this collection block and we'll just start from here and we'll say we want the claimant name, and then we also want the claim type, and then we'll add the letter itself. And then occasionally we do have the notice. And again, I might make this a bulleted list. All right, so we can go ahead and publish this, make sure no errors, and now we can run this. So let's duplicate this and run the process. And as always, typically we want to have this as a full application, not just running a module. So what we'll do is we'll go to the publish page and we'll add that matter intake to our sidebar and save that. And then we can publish that here and open it up. And we can do a test run here for us. So we have our matter intake. And I'm just going to put in some issue here. We'll call this a non-payment issue, U.S. jurisdiction. There is a settlement proposal, and we'll keep this one formal. And we'll say, you have about a week to respond. On our next page, this is where we'll add the claimant information. We'll say John is one. He's got a standard claim. He might be claiming for $5,000. He has provided some supporting evidence. And say Sarah also has a claim. This is more of a priority claim. She's asking for $15,000, but she doesn't have any supporting evidence. So we'll just keep it at those two for now. Go through. We have our review page. So again, our matter details, as well as our individual claimant details. We can go ahead and confirm and submit that. You can see here those processing messages. So user has a bit of a sense what's going on now as they're waiting a couple seconds. And yeah, we have, again, our summary. And then what we've returned is letters for both John and Sarah. Again, Sarah's was a priority claim, but she didn't provide supporting evidence. So we've also generated this claim notice. Both of them got claim letters. And now we have these and can send them out. And of course, these could be, as part of the batch process, be automatically sent via email, automatically, sent to your document management system, and things like that. Now, typically at this point, you've sort of created the process, but there's more that we can do. We can add some more access to this, the ability to edit these, the ability to have better visibility into these. The way we can do that is by adding in some more data components in the way of a data view. So what we can do from here is I'm going to create a data view that's just our matters. amount. This will be here, and we can add, let's see, we'll say the case name, reference number, defendant, jurisdiction, issue, and response. The lawyer name as well. Save that. So this will give us, again, if we go back here, this will give us this information, the matter details. Now, we're also going to want to see this information, the claimant details. So if we take one step back here, we're going to create another. So similar to how we created the databases, which are linked to each other via that matter ID, we can do the same with data views. So we're going to call this one same as we do with the database, match it up, matters and claimants. And this will be referencing the claimants database. Again, let's say we'll grab the case name, we'll grab the claimant name, the type, the amount, and also the letters and notice if they have it. One thing we'll want to do is, again, the way we set it up right now is this is just going to show all claimant data across all matters, but we want it to be matter specific. So under the configuration, we can add a parameter, and this parameter, as you may have guessed, will be the matter ID. And if we go to filter, then we can add a condition where the matter ID is equal to that parameter. Now you can see here in the preview, there's no records to display because it hasn't received that matter ID as a parameter yet. So we'll save this. If we go back to our matters data view and we'll refresh that, we can now create an action to see the claimants. And we're going to just redirect directly to the data view, the matter claimants data view. But you'll see, because we've created that parameter, it's asking us for a matter ID. And here we can just use that ID, save that, and you'll see the action show up here. All right, save that. We'll go back a step. We'll go back to the publish page. Manage sidebar items, and we're going to add this matters data view to the sidebar as well. We'll publish that, and let's run this one more time. So as we would expect, the matter intake is very much the same. If we go to matters, however, we'll have the data view here, which will show the one matter that we've created so far, all the details related to that. But now we can go to see the claimants. And you can see here we have Sarah and John, both with their claim types, the amount, as well as the claimant letters and optional claim notice, depending on what you've set up and what they've answered. So just a way that you can create multiple documents within the context of a batch process. So simultaneously creating all of these, running these jobs in tandem as opposed to one at a time. That's typically the process. Again, this can be applied to several documents, multiple documents with different levels of conditionality, as well as clause libraries, things like that. Now, one thing we're seeing more and more off of with the advent of AI in legal, especially AI in legal workflows, is how can we use AI to make us smarter, make us more efficient in these processes? One thing that we've seen is the ability to give AI context so that it's able to run through these conditions and make a determination automatically based on more free text entry. So one thing we might add there is if we go back to our matter intake, we might add, instead of letting the lawyer make the determination on whether or not this is a standard or priority claim type, maybe we want to give the user the ability to add in a description of the claim and let AI give it some context, but let AI make the determination of whether or not this is actually standard versus priority claim type. And this can be, of course, applied to many different cases. But in this case, let's build out that optionality. So what we'll do is we'll do claim description, and we'll add this into our collection. And here, I will make this a text, allow line breaks. Now here, and we'll leave claim type in just as an example to see if there's deviances in a different deviation in the responses that we get. So let's publish that. Now we're also going to have to go and open our batch process and add in here that description. So claim description as our start parameter. And then we'll go one step back. Well, let me publish this first. And then we'll refresh here because we need to map that value in. All right, so we've had claim description in. We're going to ask the user now to give a brief description of the claim itself. And now when we get to the batch process, we might want to allow an AI to review that claim, review that description, and make a determination on whether or not this is a standard versus a priority. So if we go down to where our letters are created, we'll add in, again, always like to break things up, organize myself. We're going to add in a Beeman node. So Beeman, BRYTER's AI assistant. And here we're just going to prompt. And we're going to say, claim analysis. And we'll create a new prompt. Again, similar to summary pages. I typically like to create prompts in a Word, in a text object. That way I can organize myself a little bit better. I do have one just here that I can copy and paste in. Very straightforward. But basically, we're giving it some context to say, this is what your job is in this role. Here are the definitions of standard versus priority. I've also added in a bit of a caveat that if a claim is more than 10,000, it should automatically be a priority no matter what the description describes. So that's sort of a fallback where it can always be a priority. And then basically we're just asking it to output a single word, standard versus priority, and we've given it the description. So what I'm going to do is drop in this prompt, and we'll call this claim type. And you can see here there's other elements that we can add to this. So we can, if an attachment has been created, supporting evidence, for example, we can add that here. If we have reference files that we want to use as context or reference points for the prompt and for the AI analysis, we can have that here and we can store that within Beeman. And then we can go out to different legal sources, web search, and we can also update what model we want to use here. In this case, I don't need any web search or legal sources. This is the only context I wanted to provide. So we'll have this claim analysis here. Now, from this point, instead, we have the start parameter, which was from the intake form, the standard versus priority. In this case, we're going to take the answer from our claim analysis and run that. And I'm actually going to change this to contain standard, and this, I'm going to do the same. Answer contains priority. All right, so now instead of using this claim type indication, we're going to let the AI determine what of these we're going to actually get, which letter is relevant in this particular case. All right, let's publish that. And why don't we run another test and see what we get. Go here, refresh, go to my matter intake, and we'll create a fresh matter. So it's a service issue. We'll change it to EU this time. We don't have a settlement proposal. Let's make this informal. And the response deadline, we'll make it a little shorter, only a couple days to respond. All right, now we get to the claimant details. You can see here we have our claim description. We'll go with our same claimants in this case. We'll say John has a standard claim. His claim amount is this time 6,000. He has not provided any evidence. And I have a just description here that I'll add in. Actually realizing that the description is 5,800. All right, and then we'll say Sarah again. And we're going to call this one standard as well. But the claim amount for it, we're going to have as 18,000. So you'll remember we set that rule. So we're hoping that the AI will determine that this actually isn't a standard claim type, but in fact, this is a priority. But we're going to see if it catches us on that. And we'll say we do have evidence here. And then we'll give it this description where we've put everything in. So let's add that in again. And again, we've said here, so we haven't updated our summary page, or we don't need to update our summary page because this is what the user has indicated, standard and standard. But what we're expecting is Sarah to be updated to priority, specifically for one of the reasons being that it's over 10,000. So let's confirm and submit that, and we'll give it a second to compile everything and generate our letters. All right, and again, I think this is not updated from the summary, but if we go to Sarah's letter, then it should show us this is a priority letter, and it is, and of course it's not showing here. So why don't we take one step back and we'll go to matters and we'll check there. Actually, I just realized, you know what? When we save the claimant data, we, instead of saving the claim type that was analyzed by the AI, we're still saving the start parameter. So that's why that difference was there. So it did produce a priority letter. However, we didn't save the right value. And that's, something that you'll figure out in testing, which is good that we did it. And if we go here, you can see we have this new matter. We can see the claimants and we'll have that information. And maybe in this case, we'll want to also add the description here so that we have a better understanding of why the letters are the way they are. All right, so that is one way that you can use the AI to sort of help triage the workflow and triage the conditional aspects of your applications. See, we have about 5 minutes left. Not quite enough time to get into bulk data upload and some more complex functionalities. But I'm not sure if there are any questions in the group. Feel free to send them now in the last 5 minutes, and I'm happy to go over them. And otherwise, if there are no questions, again, always available after this to chat about any of your use cases where you're looking to create some batch processing, some background actions. This can be used in a multitude of different ways beyond just document automation. You can use it to send out automated notifications. You can use it to automatically store information, store documents in your DMS, create scheduled reminders or scheduled jobs with our new scheduling feature. So no limit to the amount of things that can be accomplished with this. And we're always happy to chat about new use cases and how you're looking to accomplish, the applications you're building. So feel free to reach out. This has been recorded. It will be available after the fact. If I did go a bit quick through some of those parts, you can always follow up and get the recording from us. But I appreciate everyone for joining today. Again, for the folks in the US, hope you enjoy the holiday and get some time off. And for everyone else, enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.